Today, a wave of protests in Kiev has turned its anger towards General Oleksandr Syrsky, the top commander of the Ukrainian army. Since Russia's full-scale invasion in 2022, Ukrainian demonstrators had never publicly criticized the senior military leadership. But this week, thousands of people in central Kiev openly mocked the general, holding signs that even played on the Ukrainian word for cheese, Syrsky, go away, and chanting that he was busy with politics instead of the front. The protests began Thursday in support of Mikhailo Fedorov, a 35-year-old defense minister who was ousted by President Volodymyr Zelensky after fierce clashes with Syrsky. Fedorov, a champion of Ukraine's successful drone warfare program, had accused the general of blocking the broader use of robots in the army and of hindering other reforms he wanted to push through. Zelensky labored to keep the military stable after that clash, ultimately deciding not to re-nominate Fedorov during a cabinet shuffle. Now, a prominent protest leader, Dmitry Kozyatynsky, a former military medic with a sizable social media following, has called for a rally specifically to oust Syrsky. He demoralizes the army, sabotages reforms, creates his own loyal troops, infringes on freedom of speech, and represses soldiers, Kozyatynsky wrote on Facebook Saturday. In his words, the general's politics have been placed above the needs of frontline troops, a sentiment that echoes across the crowds. The protesters, however, are not simply out to state anger at a single individual, they are belting out a broader critique of the conditions of war. Many participants blame the general for shortages in the draft, high casualties, and the ongoing Russian missile strikes that slip through air defense systems. Supporters of Syrsky argue these hardships are unfairly targeted at him and dismiss the drone reform ideas as a technocrat fantasy. Criticism of the army's leadership is old in Ukraine. Politics has always played a role in wartime military appointments, or the lack thereof, observers point out. The 2024 ouster of Valery Zaluzhny, once a top general, was an example of politics intersecting with military leadership when the commander was seen as a potential rival to Zelensky. Yet, until this week, street demonstrations had never directly addressed the top general in that fashion. The protests also underscore how street demonstrations have historically influenced Ukrainian politics. The country's populist civic culture sits on a long line of citizens who judge leadership on the ground, not just in parliament. In this case, the people are saying their voice extends beyond mere protest to demand accountability from the highest ranks of the armed forces. Whether Syrsky will face a formal inquiry, a removal, or simply a retrenchment in public standing remains to be seen. However, the wave of anger suggests that Ukrainian society is leaning toward a new era of domestic scrutiny of the war effort. How long the protests will continue and whether they will shift again is uncertain, but one thing is clear: the Ukrainian public no longer hesitates to question the people at the very top of their defense command structure. Stay tuned for more updates on this evolving story, and thank you for listening. Until next time, keep informed and stay safe.